Welcome to the Tech Zone channel. Here we talk about Tesla cars, and not only. Enjoy your viewing. Elon Musk announced the opening of access to the Starlink satellite communication system in Ukraine. Elon Musk announced that he had opened access to the global Starlink satellite communication system in Ukraine. Starlink services are now provided in Ukraine. New terminals are on the way, the entrepreneur said. Starlink is a project of a global satellite communication system, which is designed to provide internet access to users around the world due to a large number of small devices in near-Earth orbit. Earlier, SpaceX, which developed Starlink, announced the launch of a new tariff plan with a noticeable increase in data transfer speeds, from 150 to 500 megabits per second. The speed in the standard tariff is 50 to 250 megabits per second. The founder of SpaceX, Elon Musk, has opened access to the terminals of the Starlink satellite internet system for Ukraine. He announced this on his Twitter account. Yesterday, on February 26, the Minister of Digital Information of Ukraine Mikhail Fedorov tweeted to Elon Musk with the following words: "While you are trying to colonize Mars, Russia is trying to occupy Ukraine. While your rockets are successfully landing from space, Russian missiles are attacking the citizens of Ukraine. We ask you to provide Starlink stations to Ukraine and appeal to sensible Russians to stop." Starlink satellite internet has been launched in Ukraine. This was announced by Elon Musk. The head of SpaceX announced the dispatch of additional Starlink terminals to Ukraine. After the start of the military operation in Ukraine, there are problems with access to the network in many localities of the country. One of the solutions is to use the Starlink satellite internet, the operator of which is Elon Musk's company SpaceX. And this is exactly what the Minister of Digital Transformation of Ukraine, Mikhail Fedorov, asked Musk on Twitter. Starlink satellite internet has been launched in Ukraine. This was announced by Elon Musk. He did not keep himself waiting. In a response tweet, Elon Musk said that the Starlink service is now active in Ukraine. More terminals are on the way to the country. Of course, it will not be possible to provide everyone with satellite access to the network, but Starlink will help at least partially solve the problem. Many aspects of what happened are not completely clear from a technical point of view. Obviously, Starlink terminals will be sent to Ukraine for free, since their market value, $499 apiece, is unlikely to allow them to become popular in this country. It is also not entirely clear whether they intend to charge for the provision of services themselves. On February 25, 2022, SpaceX announced the successful launch into Earth orbit of the next batch of 50 mini-satellites of the global internet network Starlink. This satellite withdrawal was already the 39th since May 2019. Currently, the orbital constellation of SpaceX satellites consists of almost 2,000 spacecraft, thereby Elon Musk's company has become the largest satellite operator in the world. According to Wikipedia, Starlink is a global satellite system deployed by SpaceX to provide high-speed broadband satellite internet access in places where it was unreliable, expensive, or completely inaccessible. It should be noted that today the Starlink project, although it has the largest satellite constellation in the world, is extremely far from full deployment. So far, less than 2,000 satellites have been deployed out of the planned several tens of thousands. In general, SpaceX sees Starlink as a key source of its funding for the coming years. By 2025, the company expects to receive $30 billion in revenue per year from it. It is not yet known how real this is. In most regions of the world, internet tariffs are lower than the projected Starlink tariffs. In addition, alternative types of connection do not require such expensive terminals from the user, which still need to be placed on the street in some way. At the same time, in the USA, where high internet tariffs and the predominance of detached houses in residential buildings, this solution looks quite competitive. US President Biden has promised to impose sanctions against the Russian space program. U.S. President Joe Biden has promised to impose sanctions against the Russian space program. The politician's speech is broadcast on the White House Twitter account. According to him, the United States will block more than half of high-tech imports to Russia. This will deal a blow to their ability to continue to modernize the armed forces. This will harm their aerospace industry, including the space program, the politician said. The American leader added that this would also reduce Russia's ability to compete economically. This will be a significant blow to the long-term strategic ambitions of Russian President Vladimir Putin, Biden said. The head of Roscosmos, Dmitry Rogozin, criticized the U.S. sanctions. Elon Musk answered him. "If you block cooperation with us, who will save the ISS from an uncontrolled descent from orbit and falling into the territory of the United States?" said the head of Roscosmos. The head of Roscosmos, Dmitry Rogozin, criticized the sanctions against Russia on Twitter, and the head of SpaceX, Elon Musk, responded to him. According to Rogozin, the sanctions imposed, which also affect the space industry, may negatively affect the future security of the International Space Station, ISS. "Do you want to destroy our cooperation on the ISS? So you are already doing this by limiting exchanges between our cosmonaut and astronaut training centers. Or do you want to manage the ISS yourself?" Russian media quoted Rogozin as saying, "Maybe President Biden is not in the subject, so explain to him that the correction of the station's orbit, its avoidance of dangerous approaches to space debris, with which your talented businessmen have dirted the near-Earth orbit, is carried out exclusively by the engines of Russian Progress Mississippi cargo ships. If you block cooperation with us, who will save the ISS from an uncontrolled descent from orbit and falling into the territory of the United States or..." the head of the Russian state corporation added. Elon Musk commented on these tweets. SpaceX, the billionaire said in response. "After all, it is true that SpaceX with its guided missiles are almost the only ones who can cope with this task." On February 24, U.S. President Joe Biden announced sanctions against Russia over a military special operation in Ukraine. In particular, the United States has restricted the export of high-tech products to Russia, which will affect, among other things, the space industry. From 2011 to 2016 inclusive, Roscosmos was the undisputed world leader in the number of civilian launches. Until 2017, SpaceX did not have a single military launch. However, over the past year and a half, the situation has changed dramatically. In 2017, SpaceX had 16 civilian launches. Roscosmos, taking into account the explanation of the corporation's press service that all the launches listed on its website are civilian, had 15 launches, one of which was unsuccessful. Launches from the Kourou Cosmodrome in French Guiana were not taken into account. The company has shown the industry by its example that private space exploration is possible, and we are increasingly hearing about new startups that are developing satellites or new rockets. After all, rockets that are printed on a 3D printer are already being developed, and for example, Rocket Lab's Electron rocket is made entirely of carbon fiber. SpaceX has sent 50 more Starlink satellites into orbit. A little less than 9 minutes after the launch, the first stage of the Falcon 9 returned to Earth and made a vertical landing on the unmanned floating platform Of Course I Still Love You, which was located several hundred kilometers from the California coast. Meanwhile, the second stage continued to launch the payload into orbit. About an hour after the launch, the payload was deployed according to plan. This was the fourth launch and landing of this first stage. It was previously used to launch the Sentinel-6 satellite, Michael Freilich, in November 2020, 60 Starlink satellites in May 2021, as well as the Double Asteroid Redirection Test Probe in November 2021. Yesterday's launch was already the third in February for Starlink satellites. Earlier, on February 3, 49 spacecraft were launched into orbit, 40 of which were destroyed by a geomagnetic storm less than a week later, and on February 21 another batch of 46 satellites was sent. In order to avoid a repeat of the incident with the destruction of satellites, SpaceX decided to subsequently put them into a higher orbit. To date, the company has already launched more than 2,000 Starlink devices, and this is not the limit. SpaceX has permission to launch 12,000 satellites, and an application has been submitted for 30,000 additional ones. However, in the rather distant past, invisible threads stretched between Musk and Russia. In the early 2000s, a young and not as famous as now, Elon Musk came to Russia with the intention of buying converted intercontinental ballistic missiles in which he was going to launch mice to Mars. According to the biography of the billionaire, written by journalist Ashley Vance, Musk did not bargain with Russian partners, who did not take him seriously, and flew home without missiles. And as if on the way from Russia, he decided to build missiles on his own. Welcome to the Tech Zone channel. Here we talk about Tesla cars, and not only. Enjoy your viewing.